What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We got a great show today. I've got Daniel from the Cobwebs channel. He is back on the show. Dude, what's been going on with you, man?
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about some 80s teen stuff. Some people might think it's weird that I'm here because I was not alive in the 80s, but I was in high school way more recently than you were, like way more recently. So I can speak from experience.
Oh, dude. See, now that you said that, people are going to shit all over, be like, he doesn't know it. This doesn't count, blah, blah. But listen, like, I was born in the 80s, but a lot of these movies, I didn't see until I was in the 90s, probably. Like, some of these that I'm looking on my list that I've picked, I saw, as a kid, but like some of these I didn't see until I was a little bit older. But the reason I really wanted you on this is because, when you go to your channel, like, it's dedicated so much to horror, which so is mine to the extent. But I absolutely love these kind of movies. And I was like, you know what? Let me bring someone to the channel that maybe isn't going to do something like this on their channel. So if we come here, and then we can kind of dive into maybe a different genre to see, which movies from this time that you're really into, because dude, we just got done with Labor Day. It's back to school season. Like, what better time to talk about these than in, when it's back to school, talking about these movies from the 80s that revolved around high school and these teens. And I don't know if I'd call them sex comedies. I mean, they kind of knew how to really like tote the line of like being overly, there's some that, are a little bit more obscure that are like overly sexual, but they knew how to like tote the line with a lot of these movies where, there was sexual innuendos or whatever, but it wasn't like, I'm looking at my list and I'm like, I don't even know if there was like a bunch of nudity in like any of these movies. But when people talk about them, sometimes it's like, oh, the teen sex comedies from the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, definitely back in the 80s, like entertainment was kind of for everybody and there was less content restrictions, it feels like. Like I remember one time on my channel, I was talking about the Monster Squad as a kids movie, and I got some comment that was like, a kids movie, it's got all this language, blah, blah, blah. But like, that's kind of how kids movies were back in the 80s, and teen movies were kind of raunchy. And it's weird now, and that like movies feel more restricted, but then also kids are just exposed to everything on the internet, so I don't even know what the point of that is. But yeah, the 80s was a different time for sure.
Dude, I agree with like everything you just said, because it is like when I think about what I was doing in like 84 or 85, or I was probably actually even 87. I was like 5 or 6 years old. I mean, dude, at that point I'd already seen Ghostbusters. Like, I mean, this was me at 6 or 5 years old in like late 80s. So I mean, I had already seen movies like Ghostbusters, Teen Wolf, like all this stuff where maybe now like a 5-year-old wouldn't be watching, that kind of stuff. So it was weird on which movies kind of were dedicated towards kids. Gremlins was another one that was big around that time. And you look at that now and you're like, I don't know if I'd show Gremlins to a 5-year-old, but it's wild, even when it comes to these comedies and how they kind of have a crossover from, that preteen to teens to I'm in my 20s and whatnot. So definitely going to be interesting talking about this. We picked 20 of our favorites. There might be some on this list that people go, hey, what about this one? These are pretty well known, I would say, most of these ones, but there are some on the list that we didn't pick that I know a lot of people are going to ask about. And I think it was because when we talked about it and made these lists, like some of them me and you just weren't the biggest fans of, which I think other people might be like, oh man, that's a staple. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't one that you and I go back to, often. So it'll be cool to kind of talk about this list. And if people are a fan of these movies out there, these are definitely 20 that we definitely recommend.
Yeah, and there are way more than 20 80s teen movies. Like you could do part two, part three, and such. But these are
100%.
a lot of the big ones. But I think this list still does have some hidden gems that don't get enough appreciation, and we can bring some attention to.
100%, man. I totally agree. So what I'll do is I'll start and we'll just kind of go back and forth with some different picks. And then when we get
Cool.
to 20, we'll kind of wrap this thing up and we'll talk a little bit about each movie, maybe some experiences we had with it. But the first one I'm going to talk about is one that, to me, it's one of the big dogs in this, whole genre, subgenre. And it's going to be Fast Times at Ridgemont High. This is one that I saw for the first time, as a kid. Like I was young, but I saw this on television, so it was very cut at specific scenes. But to me, it always felt like kind of a coming of age story in a way. But there are some, topics and stuff in here that are a little bit, like I said, like we're talking things like abortion and stuff like that in this movie, and thinking, of a kid, in this time and what they were going through, where, you had the character like Damone who was trying to tell the nerdy kid, like, hey, if you're going on a date for the first time, here's the 5 steps that I use, to get laid. And you could tell that someone like Damone, like maybe doesn't, get as many girls as he thinks he does, but he's relaying all of his tips to this other guy. And there's a lot to this movie that really work. And I think it's just a good movie. Like, it might not be like a laugh out loud every second movie, but what it does do, to me, it just works as a whole. There's great, memorable characters in here. You got Sean Penn, you got Judge Reinhold. I mean, this was the first time I'd ever laid my eyes on Phoebe Cates, and she became like one of my favorite chicks from the 80s after that. But what is your experience with this one? Are you a fan of Fast Times?
Big fan. Yeah, I think it's great. Like the first time I saw it, I remember I was totally expecting just like raunchy teen sex comedy kind of thing. And it really blew me away how mature it is. It does tackle a lot of like heavy themes. And I almost think this movie is like nightmare fuel if you're a parent of a teenager, because it really it shows like kids going through some tough stuff in high school. But yeah, it's got so much memorable stuff. Like, Sean Penn is so great. It's the first ever appearance of Nicolas Cage. It's where Jennifer Jason
Right.
Leigh got her start. I'm a huge fan of her.
Same.
And I love that you mentioned the moment when Damone, I believe his character's name, is giving his like tips for going on a date, because I've never forgot his tip of wherever you are, that's the place to be. And he's just like, isn't this place great? I've always carried that with me, and I totally believe that. Like that's the kind of demeanor you should have.
Dude, I totally agree with that too. I followed that program like that too, the Moan 5-step program, because it's just, that's how you should be in certain situations like that. Like, moping around isn't going to work, but no matter the situation, if you try to make it the best it can be, then, it's, what do they call that? Where it's act as if, or whatever, like as if this is the best place to be. That's how we're going to act. And I think it is, it just works really well. And like I said, it really does feel like a coming of age story in a way, because they do battle with so many different issues of like heartbreak, and then having that first crush and her liking someone else, and there's so much to this. And like you said, there was a lot that went on in this movie with just this all-star cast that I think it just worked from head to toe. And it's definitely one I think most people have probably seen, but if they haven't, highly recommend. It's just a movie itself, and I think it actually fits pretty perfect for the Criterion Collection. And I don't usually say that often when it comes to movies like this, but I think this really does fit for this company.
Yeah, for sure. It's a trailblazer, because it came out in 1982. And I'm just going to go straight into another one that came out at the very beginning of the 80s, 1980, that also I think is surprisingly mature, and that's Little Darlings, which I just recently saw because Cinematograph put this out and I picked it up. And man, I loved this movie. This is another one that blew me away for like how I was expecting just a raunchy teen comedy. And it tackles it so much better than I thought it was going to, because it's about a couple of girls at summer camp making a pact of who's going to lose their virginity first. So it sounds like American Pie. But one thing that struck me about the movie when it starts is these kids look like kids. Like they're not like 20-somethings playing high school seniors like in American Pie. So it kind of like immediately makes you think like they really need to tackle this tastefully. And they do. And it really like, it's very heartfelt and like kids trying to find themselves, figure out who they are, their identity, their sexuality. The two main girl actors are amazing in this, especially her name escapes me, but the one that plays like the rougher kid with the harder background. Her performance just like broke my heart, and it's such a great movie. It was marketed as like a raunchy teen comedy. It's less that, so we'll definitely get into funnier stuff later on this list, but it's just a really like beautiful, heartfelt movie that I just thought was so great.
Yeah, I agree, man. This was actually the first time that I had seen this too. I'd heard about this for many years, but for whatever reason, it just kind of passed me by. And when this came out, I was like, oh, shoot, now's a perfect chance to get this thing and check it out. I didn't own it, never saw it. And I agree, it does fit in that same mold as maybe something like a Fast Times, where, like you said, they deal with real issues. It's not just like that slapstick, laugh out loud comedy like we get as we get into the 80s a little bit more. Like this one dealt with some real issues, but like you said, it just worked. And there was those elements, the comedic elements in there. But like you said, I think they played it really strong, in this flick. And I 100% agree. It's one I can't believe I missed all this time. So I don't know. Is this available anymore? Is this thing already long sold out?
I think it's sold out, but at least it's on streaming now. Because I remember it didn't used to be on streaming at all. It was kind of lost. Because I remember trying to find it before this. But at least it getting released on physical media got it back on streaming. And it wouldn't surprise me if some other label, now that the rights are out there, picks it up for people that missed out on this.
I'm gonna keep in this vein, man, on my next pick of like where we're kind of ramping things up to those like comedies that everybody knows. This is another one that I think just does the same thing right. Is going to be Last American Virgin, which I do think I would categorize kind of in the same vein as something like a Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I always keep these together, and again, this is an early '80s one, too, with an all-star cast, and this is one that is, there's parts where you're laughing out loud, but at the same time this deals with some real issues. It feels kind of like, again, another kind of coming of age story. And it does. We talked about this with Fast Times, and I can't even believe that we're doing it again, but like there's abortion mentioned in this as well. And it goes back to, the whole kid who falls in love with this girl, but she likes somebody else. That's one of his friends. It's a very similar in tone as Fast Times, but this one I think is a little bit more raunchier than Fast Times. Like there's some scenes in here where it is, really raunchy, but man, it's a great story. And I don't know if you're aware of, this was basically just a rip off of like a foreign movie.
Well, it was actually the director remaking his own movie because he was from Israel. As the main Canada guy was either Golan or Globus. I can't remember which one. I think Golan.
Do you remember what the name of that was? It was something about like fruit or something. Wasn't
lemon
it like there was
popsicle?
Lemon popsicle.
Weird,
I've always wanted to get my
title.
hands on that and check that. Like I've never seen that version, but there's carryover to this movie that everybody always questioned. It's because this was basically a rip-off remake of his movie. Like that scene where I'm trying to think the characters, the main character, the kid, goes and visits her after she went through a medical procedure, and he brings her like a thing of oranges or whatever, and people like, why did he bring her like a bag of oranges? It's very weird. But I guess in that other culture where the original movie came from, it makes so much sense, but you bring it here and it makes no sense at all. And people are always like, that's the most random scene ever, like that he'd bring her, I think it was like a Christmas tree and oranges or something. Like it didn't make any sense at all. But because this was basically a ripoff of a foreign movie, is that why I'm surprised they didn't just like change some things a little bit where people weren't like scratching their head. Like
he probably didn't know that it should be changed. He's just like, this is normal. Let's do this.
Yeah. But it is, again, it's a teen sex raunchy comedy for sure. I mean, they're group of kids at one point are having sex with a hooker or whatever, and then they all get crabs and they go to the town pool, and
as everyone did in high school, right?
Yeah.
Super common.
Like, yeah, let's go. What do you want to do tonight? Like, let's go see that girl down the street. And then they all like take turns, and they're like in the pool. What are you doing? Oh, nothing. And they're like try to drown them. They're like, oh, this works.
I gotta say, to speak to this movie's raunchiness, the first time I saw it as an adult, so I'd already seen a lot of raunchy comedies. I thought this movie was shocking in how raunchy it is. Like, I think it's still one of the filthiest movies I've ever seen. And I kind of think maybe that is because it really is a foreign film. They just made it over here. And that's kind of why it pushes a lot of things way further than American movies typically do.
Yeah, it's definitely one to check out. I know it does have, this is an Arrow Video Blu-ray, but it does also have a Blu-ray that's more accessible now from MVD. They put it as part of their Rewind collection, but it's definitely one I always recommend to people. I would say it's probably like a sign of the times. It has that feeling. Like I think that they really do kind of push the limits on this as well, but also touching upon real life moments. And not all movies end in happy endings. And this is one of those movies that you get to the end and you're like heartbroken, on how this kind of ends. And that was always one of the biggest issues I heard with this movie, is why it didn't become such a huge hit like some of these other ones we're going to talk about, is that it actually, the ending kind of threw it off because people weren't expecting. They get to a high and then it just comes crashing down. So I don't want to spoil too much about what it is, but it's definitely something to check out. And I think that's what they said definitely hurt this movie, but they didn't want to change it because they wanted to show you that like not everything, is great and grand all the time. And there's not many people that take that kind of chance, with their movie, is to end it on such a sour, note. But definitely one I want to talk about, because to me, it's definitely, when I think of this subgenre, it's one of the big dogs in my head. So I wanted to definitely bring it to the table.
Cool. Yeah, I think I'll for my next pick, I'm going to go with another R-rated one of my absolute top favorites, and that's Secret Admirer. I only discovered this like within the past couple of years, and I just threw it on Tubi with no expectations, and it blew me away. And I bought the Blu-ray like right away, and then I showed it to my wife like that same week, so I watched it like twice in a row. It's so great. It's such a great cast. C. Thomas Howell, Lori Loughlin, Kelly Preston, who's like my top celebrity crush of all time, and he's in love with Kelly Preston, and she doesn't love him back. She's like the most beautiful, popular girl in school, and he gets an anonymous love letter, and his friends kind of talk him into like, oh, Kelly Preston probably wrote this, so he starts going after her with a little more confidence. But all the while, he's got his best friend over here, Lori Loughlin, and could the right girl be in front of him the whole time? It's that kind of classic story, but it's really elevated, I think, by the cast that plays the parents, because this love letter just
Mhm.
keeps bouncing around from character to character, and it creates all of these misunderstandings. And you've got like Dee Wallace and Fred Ward, for example, as the
Yeah.
parents, and they're trying to figure out like, is my partner having an affair? Is that why this letter is here? And it is so funny, but it's so fun. It has so much heart. It's not like Fast Times and Last American Virgin. They've got their gut punch moments, their heavy drama. This one doesn't. It's just popcorn fun from start to finish,
Mhm.
and I just love it. I think it's awesome.
Man, you know what's funny is this is another one that passed me by as a kid. Like this is one that I would have loved, and I didn't really hear about this until I'm gonna say a couple of years ago. I got the Blu-ray from Olive Films. This was back before this one came out, and that company went kind of under, so Kino took it over. But I was doing a show when I first had started YouTube, and I had my buddy on who's a huge Corey Haim fan. So we were talking about Corey Haim movies, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Secret Admirer," and I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What do you mean, Secret Admirer?" He's like, "You remember Corey Haim's like when he was like really young and he was the little brother?" I'm like, "No." So I looked it up, and of course, like he's the little brother in
Yeah.
this movie. Like he's Dee Wallace's son. And I didn't even realize that. He doesn't have a huge part in it. This was an early, like very early on in his career. Um, but that's what got me to check it out because I was like, I can't believe I missed this. And then when I watched it again, of course, I love, Lori Loughlin, Kelly Preston, of course, C. Thomas Howell. So all-star cast. And like you said, it was a fun movie. Like, and it has such a great cast, and each cast member plays such an important part in this story. And like you said, there, a lot of misunderstandings. A lot of times you're kind of like at the edge of your seat, like, oh my God, how far are they going to take this because of the confusion with the letter? And, it's definitely one that when we started this, there's some hidden gems in here. And I think this is one of those hidden gems because, like I said, for you and I both, like it took us a little while to find out about this movie. It wasn't one that was completely talked about like some of the other big ones we're going to mention today. So I 100% agree that this thing is a hidden gem for anybody who wants to check it out.
Yeah. I almost wonder if it missed its audience because, like, it's not exactly a super raunchy comedy, but it's rated R. So it doesn't, like, fully satisfy people who want a hard R experience, but then it's rated R. So it's not exactly for families. So it's kind of weirdly in between. But
Mhm.
for people like us, I think it's pretty perfect because, like, it's just fun, but it's just a little bit edgier.
Yeah, and you know what? This helps me kind of segue into the next pick because you kind of talked about this, and we said this with a lot of these movies. Like, there's a lot of similarities with them. Like, there's some between Fast Times, there's some between Last American Virgin. Now you had The Secret Admirer, where the character of C. Thomas Howell like really, really wants Kelly Preston because she's the popular girl, but he's got the best friend next to him, Lori Loughlin, where you're like, man, this girl is perfect for you, but he can't see that because he just sees the attraction of the popular girl and her looks. And it kind of falls in the same vein as my next pick. And I don't have a standalone edition of this. I have this like crazy John Hughes collection, but I'm going to talk about Some Kind of Wonderful, which I do think is another one that doesn't get enough love when it comes to John Hughes flicks. And that kind of falls in the same vein of what we're talking about here. You have what's his name there? Oh my God, the dude who was supposed to play Marty McFly. What's his name?
Oh, Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz. Oh my God, Mask. Yeah. So Eric Stoltz is the main character, who I do love. Eric Stoltz. I think he's a very unique and cool character and actor. And he has this huge crush, on Leah Thompson, who's the main popular girl, and he really wants to kind of win her over, but he needs help from his best friend. And that's the one that, she really loves him. He looks at her as more of like his best buddy. but he really wants, the Leah Thompson character. And then by the end, where he goes through these ups and downs trying to get her, that he does realize that he really does, his perfect match is, his best friend the whole time. And I think this is another one that has a ton of heart. It's not one of those raunchy comedies of this time. It does have a lot of heart, and I feel like it does kind of get slept on as a John Hughes classic, because it doesn't have that cast of characters we're used to that in like all his big movies. Like, you got Leah Thompson, Stoltz, and Mary Stuart Masterson. She was in At Close Range. Have you seen that?
No, I've always meant to see that movie.
Oh my God, man.
That's Sean Penn, right?
Yeah, you would love that movie. It's so freaking good. So yeah, she's in that. That's another one I know her from. But yeah, like she plays his best friend and she does a great job. And that's kind of where this movie goes is, you kind of realize that she's his perfect match, even though he's kind of looking past everything she can offer him for the looks of this other girl. Now, I know we did this. Was this one of the ones you said you weren't familiar with that I said I wanted to bring to the table?
Yeah, this is the only one on the list I've never seen. I didn't even know what it was about or anything. But now that you're talking about it, I need to see it. It sounds really up my alley. It sounds like a good time. The casting sounds interesting too, because I totally would have guessed that Leah Thompson would be the best friend because she seems so much like the girl next door type, so that she's the popular girl.
Yeah.
Interesting casting. So I'm very curious to check that out.
It's really cool, man. I really think like it's one of those movies where the opening scene, you're like, "Ooh, I'm interested in this." It's got Mary Stuart Masterson like playing like drums because she's kind of like got a tomboy edge to her. So she's playing drums. He's kind of walking, down train tracks and stuff. It's a real cool opening to the movie. And like I said, it's not a raunchy teen comedy, but it's a very John Hughes-esque where it's a great story. And it involves teenagers in high school. So I would highly recommend that you hunt this one down, and it might even have like a nice 4K and all that stuff. I just have it on this set here, but definitely one I would have you and anybody who's watching this add to their list.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think I'm going to transition to a movie that I don't think you've ever seen, License to Drive.
Oh, get out of here.
You ever seen this?
Of course, man. I mean, you're going to come at me with some Haim story. I can't even talk about Haim. I already, you're killing me, man. We already did Secret Admirer. You're bringing up Haim. Now you're bringing up against License to Drive. You're taking all my picks here. Of course, man. Yeah. I think this is one of those ones to me that's like that. This has got classic written all over it, but for some reason it just doesn't get that edge of some of the other ones that we're going to talk about. Like people know it and people that know it love it, but I still think it's not one of those movies that everybody, loves, like you would talk about with some of the other ones we'll bring up later. But I love this movie, man. I think this was Haim's best right here.
Yeah, it is so much fun. One of the most fun, like hilarious teen comedies I've ever seen. And I love this soundtrack so much because I specifically love that song, Get Out of My Dreams, Get Into My Car. Mm-hmm. It's like one of the best soundtrack songs of all time. I love it so much. And it does have a lot of just insane antics with the girl in the back seat. Heather Graham, of course. Heather Graham. And a lot of stuff that like I said, just insane antics that are happening with this poor drunk girl. But it always maintains this feeling of fun. And it's just great to see the Coreys together. They're really just at their best because Corey Haim is perfect as the nice kid, boy next door, audience surrogate. And then Corey Feldman is perfect for the crazy, nutty friend who's going to provide a lot of comedy relief. So they're so well cast. And I just think it's a blast. Now, one thing I was just looking up is, one reason it may not be quite as much of a classic as it should be is it's been so horribly MIA on physical media for a while. But I wanted to see if it's at least on streaming. It is. It's not on any streaming services, but you can rent it in a couple of places. But yeah, availability is not super great for this one, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know why either, but like I can kind of do my best to dig. So like I have this DVD here and I have this with people like this is one of the most rare Blu-rays out there.
Yeah.
And people are always like, oh, we need it back. We do. I don't know if it has to do with this, but these were both Anchor Bay releases. So I don't know once they were acquired what happened to the license when it came to that stuff. But I don't know if it has to do with that, but it is very weird because Haim's stuff is very MIA. Like Lucas is the same way. Lucas is another one where, came out from Anchor Bay and it's just gone. And a lot of his stuff is just not available. But what I hope that happens is somebody re-releases this, because now's the perfect time. And we see it all the time that you release something, you pretty this thing up. Vinegar Syndrome does a VSU of License to Drive, and all of a sudden this creates a huge and whole new fan base for this movie. And I think that's what physical media does really well now, is that they can take movies that maybe just didn't get to that level and bump it up a couple notches with just exposure. And this is one I think would definitely benefit from that, because in my opinion, it does feel like a perfect teen 80s comedy. Just the idea of the story. Kid goes to get license, fails, pretends he's got license, gets dad's car, shenanigans ensue, and the whole time you're kind of like, oh my God, he doesn't even have a license, and he's got his dad's car, and all this stuff's going on. He's going to get in so much trouble. Like, it's a very 80s style storyline, and I think the whole cast is great. Like you said, not only the, Feldman's in there, Heather Graham's in there, but even his parents are awesome in this movie. So I think this is one which, to me, is one of the best. But I could kind of even say it's one of the gems that we mentioned earlier if people maybe just haven't seen it due to lack of availability.
Yeah. I almost think it's a cliche now for people to say this should get a VSU, because I feel like people say that about everything. But this should get a VSU. Like, this feels perfect, I
agree. 100%. I agree that it does feel like that would be a movie that would work very well. And there's so much cool things they could do with that packaging and stuff. And yeah, it's one that people are chomping at the bit to get their hands on again, because like I said, that Blu-ray of that and something like Lucas just go for big money now, because it was such a short window that those things were available before Anchor Bay kind of, was bought out and whatnot, and all their stuff just went completely out of print. So, man, I'm so happy you brought this one up, because to me, it's an absolute classic, and it really does show that when you take the two Coreys, and it's Corey Haim to me felt like a lead actor, where Corey Feldman, I feel like a lot of times feels like he's better in that secondary role.
100%.
Because you look at Lost Boys, and I said this in a video not too long ago. I said, no matter what goes on now, and, Haim not in the sequels because of his issues he was dealing with, and Corey Feldman kind of taking reins as like the Lost Boy. Lost Boy was Haim's movie. It really was Haim's movie. And Corey Feldman played a huge part in it, but he's better as like that secondary character, where when Haim took the lead, he really shined. And I think Lost Boys and Lucas and License to Drive are proof of that, of what he was capable of when, he was in the right headspace. So, man, I'm so happy that you picked this one up, because this was definitely a staple of my childhood for sure, was License to Drive.
Yeah.
I can piggyback off that, man, because I think of storylines, like you said, when we talked about License to Drive feels just very 80s, the storyline itself. This one feels very 80s with the storyline itself, and this is such a fun movie where it falls in the same vein where License to Drive isn't a raunchy comedy. It's a comedy. It's a fun teen high school comedy, where this one is as well. And this is Adventures in Babysitting with Elizabeth Shue. Now, this is another one from the 80s that, again, the story is so kind of bonkers. It only works in that time frame, I think. They did try to kind of remake this. I don't know if you ever saw that remake.
No.
In the 2000s, it was with... it was a... What?
I don't want to show my VHS.
Bro, I don't even have that on VHS.
So I just found this in a thrift store one day, and I was like, I got to have that.
That is sweet, man. What an iconic cover. So look at that artwork.
Yeah, it's so good.
I love that.
Imagine a world where like some kid's comedy about babysitting gets artwork that good. That does not happen anymore.
100%. Like, look at that. And what's so cool about that is when you take a look at that thing and you see it on a video store shelf. I mean, as a kid, does that just not draw you in? Like, what is this movie about? These guys are climbing a wall in the city with like a rope, and everybody, like, it's just insane when you look at that picture. Like, your brain starts wondering, what could this be? This seems like the biggest adventure movie ever,
Yeah,
I love it.
For sure.
I love it. But the storyline here is like Elizabeth Shue is basically the babysitter babysitting these kids, which these kids are just other teenagers, basically. For some reason, she was just like a senior and they were freshmen or something like that. And you had the little girl, obviously. But a lot of hijinks ensue and they kind of get lost and stranded and they've got to find their way back. And, you know, just being teenagers running through the cities and these inner cities and trying to find their way home and stuff. And all these different things happen to them. And you meet all these different characters throughout. Super, super fun. As a kid seeing this thing and all of a sudden you see Thor and being a big superhero fan as a little kid, I was like, what? This Thor's in this? Like, you know, I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but I absolutely love this, man. I think this is another standout for Elizabeth Shue as the lead here. I think it just really works. I think this could be one of those movies where the people that know it love it, but it's not one that gets completely talked about all the time. But there was a kind of a sequel, a spin, like a remake in the 2000s with Jonah Hill. Did you ever see that?
Oh, The Sitter?
Yeah, like it kind of was this. It was. I wouldn't say that it was a remake, but I mean, I remember when at the time people were saying, "Oh, it's the remake of Babysitter." I don't know if it really was, but it was very similar.
You know what's funny is I think I saw that movie, but I remember almost nothing about it. I feel like kind of an interesting director made that. I'm trying to remember who did it. Oh yeah, it was David Gordon Green.
Oh,
Halloween man himself.
I totally forgot
David Gordon
about
Green
that.
is one of the strangest filmmakers of all time. Like you look at his whole filmography and you're like, how did the same man make all of this stuff? It's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, I would recommend The Sitter just for the idea of like it really does follow this storyline, but different hijinks. But it's a similar story, so I can see where people say it's a remake. But I don't know if it would ever was touted as that.
Yeah, not officially, I don't think. Yeah, that's wild. Like that's a blast from the past memory for me. The Sitter. I haven't thought about it.
You're gonna add that to your list now. The Sitter and Some Kind of Wonderful is gonna be your back-to-back double feature.
Yeah. Man, David Gordon Green. I just recently did a video where I talked about like one of this little indie drama that David Gordon Green made in the early 2000s. Like he's made like every kind of movie short of a Marvel movie practically.
Yeah. What is he like? What are some of the ones that he did that like, were you fans of some of the ones he did before he got put on Halloween?
Yeah, like the one I was just mentioning, All the Real Girls. It's just like this little romantic drama that's actually very good. I do, for the most part, like his Halloween movies. And I'm trying to remember everything. I don't like Exorcist Believer. Then he made a bunch of raunchy comedies. He made Joe, which is this Nicolas Cage drama that's actually pretty interesting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your Highness, that medieval comedy.
Dude,
yeah.
I've never seen any of those.
Weird. He's a weird guy for sure.
Then he just gives up Exorcist. Yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I screwed up. Sorry.
Yeah,
Somebody take it from me.
Horrible.
But I mean, that was a big thing when he just kind of he just left the project or he was booted or whatever. Like, I don't know. I mean, I had a big rant about that at one point, and I never rant about anything, but that really pissed me off because I'm like, how can you announce 3 movies and then just bail? Like, to me, that just goes and show like he had no story. Like he was just going to be like fly by the seat of his pants, and I feel like that's how he kind of was with the Halloween franchise. Like, yeah, we're doing 3. And it was in my head, I'm thinking when a director says they're doing 3, there needs to be a beginning and end. And I feel like he just gets to the next one. He's like, okay, what are we going to do now? Like, that's how it felt. It's like, even with Halloween and when he did that with The Exorcist, it kind of failed. And it was like, I don't think he had a plan because how do you just give up on that? At least if he said, all right, guys, don't worry. It's going to make sense later. But to just be like, yeah, so someone else is doing whatever you want. It's like, well, wait a minute. You just brought Linda Blair back as like this cliffhanger. Now what's going to go on? You know,
well, I know with Halloween, the original pitch was it was going to be 2 movies. And then I think the first movie was so successful that they're like, no, we're going to make it 3. So then I think his plans just got thrown off. So then he made Halloween Kills, which is kind of like a first half of a story. And then COVID happened. So Ends got way delayed. And I heard about several different versions that Ends was going to be. Like, I remember it was going to be kind of about COVID, which is so weird. So I think it just changed a lot in the process. And that's kind of thing that, like, sometimes, like, filmmakers do have plans and producers say no. Or sometimes they figure out, oh, actually, this isn't going to work. And it could be that he did have a plan for Exorcist and then that the first movie was so bad that everyone was just like, okay, we don't care about your plan, you're gone. And he was probably like, yeah, that's fine, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
for real, it
I
could
was
have.
fine when he got booted because Mike Flanagan came in, and I was like, all right, I don't think Mike Flanagan's ever made anything bad, so I have full faith in him.
Oh, I think it's going to be a better gig whenever that is that whenever that does come out. But I was just one of those things where it's like, well, now the problem is like that Exorcist that he did is just a nothing movie now. You know, like you had the
Yeah,
Return of Blair, you had the Mom, but it's like, yeah, but if Flanagan takes it and just does something totally different, this movie is just a one-off anything.
yeah,
Like it just is almost like a big waste of time, really.
yeah,
That's where I kind of like it's annoying because I'm like, yeah, it's like kind of connected to the original now because of like the storyline, but then it's just like it just doesn't make any sense to the
yeah.
story. And you're right about ends. Like I did hear there was a lot of different ideas. Now I'm not one of those people that hates ends. I think it was a weird ass movie. Like it doesn't really tie this together like I thought it would have.
No.
It was just very strange to introduce a character like that for the final movie and make him like the big star. Like that seems like that could have been more of a middle piece to a movie and then maybe have something happen with him on like the third chapter or whatever. Is very, very strange. But I did hear that there was some plans of trying to have this spin off into like Halloween 3 territory. Did you hear about that? Where like they were going to have Silver Shamrock Enterprises like be connected into this movie.
That would have been
Did you ever
cool.
hear
I
that
would have been
theory
down for
where
that.
like at the end it was going to be on the TV, the commercial for Silver Shamrock, and like Michael's mask or something was going to be one of those masks. It was one of those ones that was like it still was super weird, but I was like at least it would have got the fan service, I think, with like
Hmm.
a Easter egg like that where you're like, oh my god, like his mask was part of this, and connect 3 to the movies where before it's just so kind of its own thing. So I don't know. It could have been better. I think there was a lot more directions they could have made. I would have even rather personally maybe had like a passing of the torch and had a spin-off with this Corey guy being like a new serial killer, like a new Myers. I don't know. It just to me, I'm fine with it, but I can understand the problems with
Yeah,
this with that movie.
yeah. I like it. But yeah, it is a weird movie that a lot of it doesn't make sense. But I really think, like, first and foremost, I am a cult movie fan. And if you're a cult movie fan, you like a lot of weird movies that are
Mhm.
flawed but interesting. And I think that's what Halloween Ends is. So I think it's flawed but interesting, and I enjoy watching it.
I think it's a great way to put it, man, because that's what I think was my thing is like when I watched it, I remember seeing it in the theater and I looked at my friend and I said, I don't hate this because I was interested in what they were trying to tell, even though I
Yeah.
was kind of like, where is this going? Why is Michael like hiding in the sewers? Like, I mean, there was problems, but I think I did enjoy the character building of this new character. So it did kind of work for me, but I understand that it's a very bad end to such an iconic franchise for sure. But anyway, yeah, Halloween talk. We're getting excited because October is coming up. So,
Yeah,
that's why we kind
exactly.
of start talking Halloween. We could do this all night. Um, but yeah, that was Adventures in Babysitting was I think that's where we and left off.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, gonna go to a little movie. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, called Ferris Bueller's
Oh,
Day Off. Major classic film. And one reason that I'm a little bit of a weird guest for this episode, I fully acknowledge it, is I'm not the biggest John Hughes guy in general, but I do really like Ferris Bueller. I just think it's a lot of fun. It's one of those movies that is like so ingrained in pop culture that
mhm.
like when you see it, you'll recognize so much. Like there are just all of these lines that you'll see referenced and all these moments. Um, but I love Matthew Broderick in it. I love Mia Sara. I think one reason that I think I maybe like it more than a lot of John Hughes stuff is sometimes his melodramatic romance stuff doesn't work for me, and you don't really have that in Ferris Bueller. Like you just get a couple at the beginning, they like each other, they like each other throughout the movie, and there's never any like drama between them. And I like that, so it just kind of focuses on the adventure of it, and it's just so relatable, especially if you're a teenager. That like, what if you just don't go to school and you just have all these wild adventures? And I do love the character of Cameron, that he's that guy who like would never step outside the line or out of the rules up to his own devices. But he's got this friend who pushes him, and sometimes he gets mad at that friend, but ultimately that friend is good for him because he gets him out of his comfort zone. So there's a lot of good teenage themes in here, and it's just such a fun movie. So I love it. It's great.
Yeah, this one had to be in here. This is an all-time classic. These are one of the big, heavy hitters that we were talking about at the beginning. Everybody knows it. It's so ingrained in pop culture. And like you said, it's very relatable in a way too. If you weren't Ferris, you were his friend, right? You had a friend that was kind of pushing you to do things that you were like, I don't know about this. Or you were the kid telling your friend, be like, hey, stop being a weenie. Like, let's go do this. Let's do this. And, I think it is relatable in its own way. And like you did say, which is interesting, is there wasn't a lot of that kind of romance problems of does he like me, does he not, where you do get in a lot of Hughes movies. Like, it was very straightforward. It wasn't focused on that, and I can appreciate that for sure. But with that being said, since we're already on Hughes, I might as well just kind of jump into this whole mix here and talk about a couple that are also, you mentioned teen comedies from the 80s. People are saying Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles. I mean, for sure, it's just what they're going to say, because Molly Ringwald just was so ingrained in this type of subgenre. I mean, Jesus, she even made an appearance in one of my favorite spoof movies, Not Another Teen Movie. I think is fantastic that they did in the 2000s, which really does play on these movies from the 80s and 90s and this, and she even made an appearance in there because she was such an icon back then. And to me, and I know we had spoken about it, but 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink were huge hits, but to me that they really do feel very similar. Like, you've got her and a different cast around her, but sometimes I get confused on like which one is with which. Obviously one is around her birthday and the other is about like prom and stuff like that, but it's very much similar because I think she plays a very similar character in it. And she was somebody that I think really was just a big time star and helped make Hughes, what he was, or vice versa. But with 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink, still classics amongst fans of this subgenre and this genre. But the big one to me is going to be Breakfast Club. Like, this to me is like his best, in my opinion. I think as an overall movie, I think it's just top to bottom. It's so well done. I saw this at a very young age. This was actually introduced to me from my mother, and my mother is not a huge movie fan. I could probably count on my one hand of how many movies my mom recommended to me growing up, and this was one. She's like, you got to check this out. You're going to love it. And it's wild to make such an interesting movie with a great cast of characters that takes place in like one room. Like, it's hard to do that and make it interesting for the full runtime. And I think, in my opinion, they did that here. And I think this is one of the best of this genre. Are you a fan of like any of these three that I just brought up with Molly Ringwald as kind of the front runner of it?
Yeah, I'll speed run them, rank them from worst to best. So at the bottom, I would put 16 Candles, which I think is like awful. Because,
wow.
Like, almost like everything it does for comedy, I think is completely not funny and like really obnoxious. And I just don't like care about the plot of it or the romance. I could not care less about any of it. Then I would put Pretty in Pink, which I think is fine. I've only seen it once. I remember my main thought of it was like, it's like the quintessential idea of a John Hughes movie, in that like all the rest of them have some extra twist on it, or they have some idea or something that makes them distinct. And I feel like Pretty in Pink, it doesn't have anything that makes it distinct. It's just like teen melodrama and that's it. But it's a fine version of it. I'm pro the ending. I fear that it was going to have an ending that I was going to hate, and it doesn't. So I think it ended the right way. But then Breakfast Club, definitely the top. Breakfast Club is very good. I think the only thing that holds me back on Breakfast Club is like, it doesn't personally speak to me because I don't really relate to any of the characters. I wasn't like a teen angst teenager, so I can't really relate to their angst or anything. And I don't see myself in any of their archetypes, but I mean, it's an interesting movie. It's got a lot of great dialogue. The performances are terrific. Judd Nelson's my favorite because he's the most fun one to watch. And I love how The Faculty uses Breakfast Club as its template, and just like transfers it over to alien horror, which kind of makes 100%. It more fun for me. But Breakfast Club's very good. I have nothing bad to say about it.
I think you're right though. Judd is the best in that. That character is fantastic. I mean, it's like, see this? This is what happens at my house when you spill paint in the garage. You get the burn mark, like, honestly. Like, there's so many classic lines, and he was so bad to the teacher or whatever in that. And just them going back and forth. And, what I can relate to in this is I cannot necessarily see myself in any of these particularly, but I can see other people I went to school with that fit perfectly in each one of these spots. Like there was like a Bender at my school that would have acted that way to a teacher and would have been back and forth and not gave a shit and basically would try to fight him at the end of the day. Like there was somebody in my school that was just like that. So, when I watch this, I do see people that, I had been around in school back then. I don't know if it's like that now or not, but like it was kind of just interesting to see how different everybody was based on their circle of friends, on how everybody, they dressed different, talked different, acted different, just based on who they hung out with and how cliquey things were back then. I don't know if it's like that anymore, where you have like only the jocks hang out over here, or here's like the troublemakers over here, and the computer kids are over here. Like I don't know if that exists anymore to that extent or not, or if everybody just looks kind of all the same. I just
they all
don't
have the broccoli
know,
haircut. And
yeah, but I love Breakfast Club so much, and I think there's what's interesting too is we talk about Molly Ringwald, but there's another character that's in a bunch of these movies that we're going to continue to talk about in a little bit. But what do you got next on your list? Because I just threw 3 out there at once, so you can get like the next 2 or whatever.
Well, the only way we can top a 3 punch is with my absolute favorite 80s teen movie of all time, and that is Valley Girl from 1983. Man, I love this movie. See, like I kind of criticized the John Hughes melodramatic romance. Valley Girl's a straight up romance movie, but it's not like obnoxiously sappy. I don't know. Like it feels very real of like a teen romance where like they don't make too much of a big deal out of it, but it feels very meaningful to the characters. And Deborah Foreman and Nicolas Cage just have like exploding chemistry. And like Nicolas Cage, even though it's not his typical Cage persona, he's not freaking out all the time, he still has like so much screen presence and charisma that you can tell like this guy's going to be a star. And they just immediately hit it off. They have this amazing, so like as an audience member, you so want them to be together. But then it's kind of a Romeo and Juliet thing where like their friends, specifically her friends really, and her ex-boyfriend are kind of tearing them apart. And it's like pulls at your heartstrings, but you want them to get back together. And it's one of the best endings of all time in cinematic history. Like I love the ending so much. It has one of the best soundtracks. Like the soundtrack is amazing. It's got all these awesome montages of them like having fun. The I'll Stop the World and Melt with You montage is like all-timer cinema. And I love this movie. It's just one of the top feel-good movies of all time for me. It's just so much fun. And it's another one that's rated R, which is interesting. It also has a little bit of nudity. So teen movies were wild back in the 80s.
Yeah, man. And I think this also was one, like, the people that know it, I feel like do like it a lot. But I do think this is one that doesn't really get talked about enough. Where I do think it is one of the bigger, when you think about this genre, like this one really stands out, but I just don't ever hear this put in the same, category as things like 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club. So based on this list, I'm glad that you brought this one up because I think a lot of people can find this one for the first time and really enjoy it. Because this was not one that I watched a lot as a kid. I didn't see this until I was probably in my late teens, probably in like high school, maybe even afterwards renting stuff, in my 19, 20 years old and just trying all these out based on movies that I did love of that kind of genre. So it wasn't one I watched back then, but I appreciate it a lot now.
Yeah. It's another one that had pretty low availability for a while. Like I wanted to see it for a long time, but it wasn't really, you couldn't get it. So I bought this Shout Factory Blu-ray right away when it came out. And now it's all over streaming. It's pretty much always on Tubi. So it's very accessible now, which I'm happy about.
100%. What else you got? What do you got left over there?
Okay. Let's go to like one of the weirdest and craziest teen comedies of the 80s, and it's got to be Better Off Dead, starring John Cusack. Such a fun, crazy movie. Oh, I'm so glad you have it. Yeah, I can't believe I don't even have it on Blu-ray.
I think this just came out again in a new edition. I'm pretty sure. I think Kino
might have steelbook for a while.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a new one.
Came out recently, I think.
But I'm a big fan of absurdist comedy, of a comedy that like doesn't feel like it exists in our world. It doesn't make sense. Things are not. There's some nonsense stuff. And Better Off Dead is totally that, where like John Cusack will be sitting at the kitchen table staring at his food, and then his food will just kind of crawl away. And like that's just like a joke. Or like there's this little kid that keeps showing up at his door saying, "I want my $2." And he's just like, "No," and that, you know, and that just is this thing that happens over and over. So yeah, it's ultimately about John Cusack. He's heartbroken after his girlfriend dumps him. And he, you know, maybe finds a new girl, and he's trying. It's a typical story, but it's just got a bunch of the weirdest jokes you've ever seen, and I think it's hilarious. Like I think it's so fun. I think I heard John Cusack kind of hates it, but he's wrong.
Really?
It's great.
It's, you know what I like about this too, like you said, it's very different around this time, I think, than the norm that we're getting. But I do think this is kind of an underrated gem. I think this one could kind of fit in that category. And, you know, as we kind of talk about these, there's so many of these that are intertwining with the people that are involved. Like, you know, Cusack had done a bunch of other teen comedies around this time. Even Diane Franklin's in this one, and she was in Last American Version, which we talked about before. So it's just funny how a lot of these people are intertwining, and even talking about Nicolas Cage and Valley Girl, and he was in Fast Times. Like, I mean, everybody's just kind of connected in all these weird movies around this time because they were all around the same age coming up in the business. And, you know, a lot of them did things like this, or maybe some horror stuff in their early, you know, their early career. So it's kind of cool to kind of see that they are intertwined in some of these favorites, you know, when it comes to this subgenre or this genre for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, with that being said, I think, you know, intertwining in still kind of on the Hughes train, Weird Science is one because, again, Anthony Michael Hall is another character that's in all of these movies. You got Breakfast Club, you got him in 16 Candles. We were talking about him in Halloween Kills a little while ago. I mean, he's been in conversation throughout this evening. So to me, I said Breakfast Club, I think, is Hughes' best. Weird Science is my favorite Hughes comedy. And it may not be for everybody because this is a freaking bonkers off the wall movie. It's not your standard when it comes to this. It was basically just taking a random idea of these two kids building a woman, which this concept can't probably happen today. But this
actually,
is
I think it's more relevant than ever because AI girlfriends are becoming a thing.
Okay,
now.
I guess if you look at it from that standpoint, it probably is kind of relevant that they could do that. You can actually kind of go buy them now, basically. But they made this woman to basically be like the girlfriend that they always wanted, you know. And it's taken comedy, but it's adding just a weird, I don't even know, bonkers element to it. I mean, there's just so much that goes on this movie that doesn't even feel like it's in the same universe of things like Pretty in Pink and Breakfast Club. It's just so off the walls. And you have, you know, great cast. I have a poster. I have all three of these people signed on the poster. I just love this movie. And you think about Chet, you know, that character of the older brother is just like steals the freaking show. And then what happens to him? And then it goes completely bonkers. And all of a sudden, Michael Berryman's crashing through the window. I mean, this thing just goes off the walls, and it's hilarious too. Like the scenes of them going to that, you know, that bar, and they're all drunk and telling these older guys about this girlfriend that he has at school. And I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on Weird Science at all. I don't know if this is one of those movies that it takes a certain person to love this, and then other people that be like, it's just weird.
Well, it probably takes a person who saw it when they were young to like really love it. For a long time, this was like one of the biggest 80s classics that I just never got around to. But I finally saw it for the first time just a few years ago. And I've still only seen it the one time, and it hasn't super stuck with me, but I remember I had fun with it. I had a really good time. It's just a fun movie. One of the top things I remember about it is that it has Judy Aronson, who's also one of my top celebrity crushes of all time from American Ninja and Friday the 13th Part 4. So just the fact that she's in it, that's great. And doesn't it have, did you say it had Robert Downey Jr.? Because I was pretty sure
it does. Yeah, he's one of him and Robert Russler are both like the two bullies or whatever kind of guys.
Russler, that's right. Yeah.
So the cast is really big. Like they've got a lot of names in this one for sure. And like I said, you do get that appearance of like even like someone like Michael Berryman where this thing goes off the wall, because now you have, you know, the woman that they created has all these powers to like do all this wacky stuff. And then all of a sudden, like things that are that she's freezing his grandparents so they don't tell on him, and there's just so much that goes on in this movie where you're not sure like where this fits in this like 80s teen comedies, because it doesn't feel like all the rest. It takes these like weird chances where it's just a freaking bonkers ass movie. And I do recommend, if anybody is still kind of not a big fan of this, to give it another watch, because I don't know, it's definitely my favorite of the bunch because it just feels so unique of a movie.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Okay, so let's go over to one of my top favorites. I just love this movie so much. Can't Buy Me Love, starring the great Patrick Dempsey. I think one reason I love this movie is it feels very relatable to me personally. Not because I ever did this, but because like I was never a cool guy in high school, and I even like I was homeschooled for most of my childhood.
Wow.
And then I came into public school my junior year of high school, which is kind of a difficult transition, but I made it. I made it okay, but I never had like the high school experience. And I can kind of relate to Patrick Dempsey just like wanting that so bad and just like figuring out some way to do it. And I also tend to really connect with self-improvement movies. And that's ultimately, I think, what this is, even though like he definitely makes mistakes along the way. He doesn't handle it perfectly, kind of forgets where he came from, but he's ultimately trying to better himself. And I find that that kind of story very satisfying. And by the end of the movie, he is in a better place. So he has achieved some kind of self-improvement. And it is so fun. It's got a lot of great jokes. It's got such a great cast, but it's also, it really is genuinely romantic, where I really do care about this relationship, and Dempsey and Amanda Peterson. They honestly do have terrific chemistry, and they're like, you really do root for them by the end of this. And it's a blast. It's gotta be like one of my top comfort movies.
I agree. If you had to tell me on this whole list, this would definitely be probably top 5 easy of all the ones that we're talking about today.
Me too.
And this is one, like you said, kind of like a lot of these other ones like License to Drive, is that I don't think this gets as enough love as it should, because it has been highly unavailable for so long. Like it had a VHS and it had this, and I think that's kind of it. This is one of those movies. I just did a whole video about movies that that I would love to see upgraded, because a lot of people were getting a lot of the same stuff, and people like, oh, we're getting this again. I'm so happy to have it. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know if I'd ever need to get a 4K of Secret Admirer. Like I think I'm fine with that, with what I have, but all of a sudden now Can't Buy Me Love comes out in 4K, and I'm first one to order the thing, because it's like this has been so lost and it deserves more love.
Wait, did you say it is coming out in 4K?
No, I'm saying if it does get announced.
Oh, okay.
I did a
video
like, how did
I miss that?
No, I did a video on like which movies I think like are the ones that need upgrades, not the one that like we see all the time. This is one, but it's Touchstone, and that's the problem. It's like that those are trapped, I think, with Disney, and that's where this is having its problems. And I don't know if it has to do with music too, but I don't know if we ever see this again, which sucks, because there's a lot of Dempsey movies around this time that are stuck, kind of like Haim. Like Run is another one. It's an action thriller, stuck. Loverboy, stuck. Like, I mean, he's got a lot of good flicks from this time frame that it kind of stuck, on DVD. And I wish more people would get to check them out. But you're right. Like, there's so much to this that works. It's not raunchy. It's not one of those like early 80s ones that, you see all this stuff, but it's a great movie. It's fun front to back. Like you said, it is a self-improvement movie, right? Like he could always be that kid that he was. He just needed the opportunity to do it. Everybody loved him. He didn't even really need to change who he was, really, because people did just like him. But I think he just kind of, got in over his head at points where he just needed that in. And for him, and I'm sure there's a lot of that goes on, is that when you're with the same people your whole school career, it's hard to make that transition from like who everybody knew you as to like all of a sudden you come back from the summer and you're like the cool guy now because you maybe had a change of clothes or something like that, right? Like it's interesting, like how stuff like that, like you said, he always had it in him, but he just kind of got too far when he got in too deep when it came to that stuff. And it talks about friendships and all the other stuff, and then he kind of rights his wrongs. And it's a great movie. It's fun as hell. We get the anteater dance or whatever they call that thing. That's fun as hell.
Oh yeah.
I love this movie, man. I really, really do. So, anytime we can bring this thing up, I'm super stoked. And I do think this is one of the gems that we talked about before that not everybody has probably seen.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. This is one I would say when you think of high school, 80s, teen comedies, this falls right in there for me. One of my favorites of this genre, this subgenre, just one of the guys. I love this movie, man. Like, I really, really do. I don't know if this is one of those movies that's kind of, you're not going to do this again now, but they've tried multiple times, kind of similar concepts. But this one is one I saw way too young. And this is probably the first pair of breasts I think I'd ever seen in my life was this movie here.
Yeah, you know what's funny is okay.
Don't even tell me you haven't seen this.
No, I have. I've seen it once years ago. So I do not remember it very well. I'm just going to have to sound like a male pig. The only thing I remember from this movie is the boob shot.
I mean, that's
for sure.
After the first time I saw this movie, that was the only thing I remembered about this movie pretty much too. Two things. I remember that, and I remember all the different callbacks to and mentions of Karate Kid, because that was a huge movie for me back in the day. So, but then when I got older and was able to see it again, I fell in love with this movie, man. It just works on all levels. And I think Joyce Heiser, who's the star in this, I'm shocked she didn't do more. I thought she was fantastic in this. She kind of just, I don't know, she's didn't really do much after this movie. And I think this works on all levels. I think this is like one of the most perfect teen comedies from the 80s that's out there.
Yeah, I guess because it's more my generation, I know the semi-remake She's the Man quite a bit better, which is not a particularly good movie, but I've seen it more times.
I would go back and watch this for sure. I mean, I think that William Zabka, who plays Johnny in Karate Kid, actually is a better bully in this one. I think he's a better bully than he is as Johnny. He plays a very, like, if his name was Johnny in this, he was the same character, except I think turned it up like 3 notches. He's really, really good, and it's got a great cast of characters. But yeah, it's about a girl who's a journalist, so she writes in the newspaper at school. She feels like she's getting treated different, and her articles aren't getting seen, and she's not winning awards because she's a female. So she decided, you know what? I'm going to go to a different school, pretend I'm a boy, write these articles, and I guarantee I'm going to win these awards and stuff like that. I'm going to do this article on, what I'm going through and all this other stuff. And it's great. It's funny. Her brother in this is hilarious. Buddy, I think he kind of steals the show. But it does have a lot of heart in this as well. And I think it's just one of those enjoyable comedies where it's not just like raunchiness like throughout. There's a couple scenes that people remember, but it's a great story. And looking back on it now, you look at it and you're like, how did no one know that was a girl? Come on. But it worked, man. And I absolutely love this. I've done a whole video talking about this when I first got on YouTube. That was one of the first videos I did. It was a full retrospective on this movie. And it's actually when I first met Justin, I had him on and we talked about it together. So
cool.
I'm always promoting Just One of the Guys, man. I think it's fantastic. It's one of the best. Hopefully most of you guys out there have seen it. If not, I 100% think that you should. And I think you should, Daniel, check this thing out again.
I should, after some kind of wonderful and apparently The Sitter.
Yes, and then this. So you're going to have a whole list. That's going to be your September watch list as you start to prep for Halloween,
Oh, no. September's all horror. I'll have to wait for November.
You're gonna have to put them off.
I do 2 months of Halloween every year.
Okay. It makes sense.
All right. Let's go to this is kind of like Better Off Dead. This is another one of the weirdest movies on the list. Dream a Little Dream. Yes, I did steal all the Corey Haim from Garrett because you guys have heard Garrett talk about Corey Haim enough. Okay,
100%. I actually do enjoy other people talking about him. So go ahead.
This is, I think, like this is a weird thing. Well, actually, this goes along very well with what I said about how I'm a cult movie fan, because this movie is a mess and it does not totally make sense. And the script is kind of nonsensical at times, but I find it so watchable, like just so enjoyable to have on. For one thing, I love the cast. This movie is interesting because it flips what we were just talking about with License to Drive, where it's got Corey Feldman as the lead and Corey Haim as the friend. And Corey Feldman is a weird choice for a lead. I don't think it would work most of the time. It does work here. Like he's just a weird character. He does his like Michael Jackson stuff, but it's fun. Ultimately, the story is very, very strange. It's got Jason Robarbs and Piper Laurie, or this older couple, and this weird phenomenon happens, and it sends Jason Robarbs into Corey Feldman. So now he's an old man in a kid's body, and it sends part of Piper Laurie into Meredith Salinger. So she's like partly his wife, but she doesn't quite know it. So he has to like romance her again, which some people think like, well, that's creepy because he's an old man technically, like, and this is a high school girl. But I kind of think like it's reverted him back to high school years. So I think it works, and it actually ends up being a pretty good romance. Meredith Salinger is adorable in this. And actually she's married now to Patton Oswalt, which I find kind of fascinating.
Very, very interesting couple, I would say.
Yeah. But it's weird. But I think it's really good, and I really like it.
Yeah, when we were making this list, and you know, I was kind of happy you brought this up because I know this probably wouldn't be on a normal top 20 80s teen comedy list, because I know there's probably a couple that people can be like, hey, you brought Dream a Little Dream and you didn't talk about this. But before I really knew much about this movie and I was really digging into, you know, Corey's stuff and whatnot, this did feel like kind of a hidden gem. Like this did feel, when I first saw this, like, hey, this is probably a pretty popular movie. It's gonna Dream a Little Dream. It sounds like an 80s comedy. The idea of the body swapping is stuff we saw quite a bit around that time. So I feel like it did really make sense. And that Michael Jackson dance scene in the cafeteria, the gymnasium, as weird as it is, it does feel like one of those moments where like, oh, this is probably a moment that everybody remembers, kind of like with, you know, Say Anything and he's holding up the thing. Like, I feel like it's such a weird scene, but in my head, I always thought as a kid, like, oh, this must be a memorable scene because it's so random and out there. And I think what you said with the old man going after the high school girl, blah, blah, is weird in when you really do think about it, but I don't think they thought about it. I think they just kind of were like, oh yeah, this makes sense. But then when you dig deeper, you're like, yeah, I don't know if it does. But it is a fun movie, and I think it really does work. But I do see where you have two sides of the fence, that people that really love it and people that be like, that movie is shitty, because it is a little messy, but it does hit all the same things, you know, in a 80s team comedy that I think a lot of these movies do. That it does have all those same similarities in some extent.
Yeah. And it kind of appeals to me too, for similar reasons as Can't Buy Me Love, to where like, don't get me wrong, if I had the option to go back to high school, I would not do it. But there's a weird kind of wish fulfillment of, again, I never had the typical high school experience of like supernaturally going back to it. It's an idea that I'm intrigued by. So I enjoy watching a movie about that because I think it's interesting.
I'd go back 100%.
Oh, there you go. I'm happier now than I was back in high school, but
no, but that's a good choice, man. I think that's another gem for some people that are watching this, and we're saying the 20 best, and we're throwing things like that in there, which maybe wouldn't have been on people's radar.
People can blame me. It wasn't just his Corey Haim fandom. I'm the one that suggested
it. I said, pick one more at your choice. What do you want? And this is what he said. And I said, okay, let's do it.
I did technically first say Risky Business, but Garrett said it might not be enough of a comedy, and I thought, that might be true. So we went to this.
But yeah, this is fun though. It's a fun movie. Feldman is an interesting lead, like you said. It is, and as much as I think Corey Feldman has some great movies under his belt, him being a lead I don't think that works, but he's great as a side character, and I love tons of his movies. Sometimes when I look at my walls, I'm like, shit, Feldman was in like all of these movies. It is kind of odd to think of how many big name movies he was in, you know, Gremlins and Friday 13th and Ninja Turtles and Burbs, and it just doesn't stop. Is the stuff that he was involved in somewhere, you know. But yeah, Dream a Little Dream, definitely check it out. That's a Vestron Blu-ray that is available. It's one of the only, like I said, Corey Haim films that is available on Blu-ray. So definitely go hunt that thing down if you guys haven't seen it. All right, so my last pick, I think I've done this a couple times on videos where I've saved this for last. So I might as well just keep to it, because I build the anticipation of what my last pick's going to be. These aren't ranked, by the way. There's other videos I did where these were ranked, and this was my last pick. In anticipation, everybody's like, what is he going to pick? And I'm doing it again. My last pick tonight has got to be Teen Wolf. And people are either going to be like, oh, shit, yeah, I love it. Or they're going to be like, dude, it's always Teen Wolf. I'm so tired of them talking about Teen Wolf. But, man, you guys don't realize love or hate this movie right here is one of the movies that got me into loving movies. Like 110%. This is a movie, like I said, when my mom told me about like 5 movies in my life, this was one. And I think it was because she really saw I was starting to kind of get into monster stuff and, Universal Monsters or, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Or whatever it may be. But I can remember her saying, okay, there's a werewolf movie with Michael J. Fox. We know you like him. Back to the Future, blah, blah. I don't remember how it all went down, but she recorded Teen Wolf off TV for me one day. And I fell so in love with this movie. I must have watched this every day, which feels like months, to a point where I could recite this whole movie front to back if you put it on. That's how much I watched this damn thing as a kid, which is insane. But the version I watched was the TV cut, which actually has missing scenes from this and scenes that aren't in the theatrical cut, which I've actually never got to see again. Maybe they're on features or something, but never built into the movie, which is unfortunate because I'd love to be able to see that again the way I saw it growing up. But man, I freaking love this movie. I guess it could teeter on the line of being horror-esque, but it's like a horror comedy like we've seen before. Teenager is in high school. He gets picked on, becomes a werewolf, goes back to high school. Now he's the cool kid, but he's a wolf. So it's one of those things where it only really works back in the 80s where you could go to school as a werewolf and like be the coolest kid there and nobody questioned what the hell is going on. Like it still kind of just makes me laugh where they're playing a basketball game. He turns into a wolf mid-game. Everybody looks at him. They continue to play. Like cops aren't called, nothing. Like they're just like, yeah, finish the game. We're good now. We got this really good wolf that's kicking everybody's ass in basketball, but nobody questioned that the kid's a wolf now. But dude, I know this is a hot take, but Teen Wolf is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think it's because of the impact it had as me as a kid. It was a gateway movie for me to get into more horror stuff. I was a huge Michael J. Fox fan and just the idea of the comedic elements. And I don't know, everything about this movie worked the same now as it did when I was like 10 years old.
I love it when people have like a favorite movie and it's not a typical favorite movie for people, but I'm just like, that is so them. That totally makes sense. And I feel like Teen Wolf is so you. The thing that I think is interesting about Teen Wolf is it is such a classic teen movie kind of story. It just threw a werewolf in there because like, it's basically like Can't Buy Me Love, but instead of like becoming a popular kid, it becomes a werewolf. And it basically sends him on, in turn
makes him popular and he gets the hot girl he always wanted, right? Like
exactly.
It is weird. And he has the best friend that's really the love of his life.
Boof.
Yeah.
Yes. But Boof has an amazing wardrobe, by the way. She's always in the craziest outfits.
I love Boof. I'm glad at the end of the day, he realized Boof was the one for him, not
That's
Pamela.
Right.
And even though that was the one he was after because he could get her now because he was a wolf, which is also another whole weird thing. Like he couldn't get her as a person, but as soon as he's a wolf, she's like, "Oh, I like this guy."
Dude, some women, they like the hairy guys, they like the real men.
So I always found that funny. And I also, when we talked about earlier, when I said iconic 80s moments, that would be embedded in everybody's head is, when you think of like Say Anything, you hold up the boombox, the radio. I was like, oh, Dream a Little Dream. It's him dancing in the gymnasium as Michael Jackson. Dude, why is the handstand on a van or the surfing on a van not more like universally known as like an
probably because it's more dangerous.
It is, but I mean, it's one of those things. When I saw this as a kid, it was just so off the walls. My parents had to literally tell me, listen, you cannot do this in real life. Because I was so infatuated with it. I'm like, oh my God, we got to get a van. I got to find a van. We can surf on this van. And they had to sit me down and be like, you can't ever stand on a car while it's driving, But I was surprised it was never more of an iconic scene when people think of certain movies from the 80s, because, sometimes you bring up Teen Wolf and people are like, oh, surfing on the van. And I'm like, yes, it's so huge. But had to be my last pick. I know everybody was super anticipated to find out what I chose, but I am anticipated to find out what your last pick was, because you said to me you had a little wild card. So let's see what we got, man.
Yep. We realized one of the movies we had to throw out, so I'm bringing in a wild card. We're going with a dark comedy from the end of the decade. I Love My Dead Gay Son, Heathers, 1989. Heathers, iconic dark comedy about Winona Ryder, a girl who's kind of fed up with her popular clique. She starts to get drawn in by this dark new guy played by Christian Slater, of course, and he takes her down this horrible path of murder, and it becomes like this amazing satire about high school from a very dark perspective, leading
Yeah.
to it just insane things happening. And I think it's very fun. It's very funny. It makes a lot of irreverent jokes that some people might think are offensive, but I think are great. And Slater is just awesome in this movie. So yeah, Heathers, it's a classic. I love it.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up. It kind of is it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I have another video that I'm going to do this week because it's back to school and it's talking about like overlooked, I wouldn't say horror movies per se, but these movies that kind of teeter the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I did just watch Heathers again the other day because that's going to be one of my choices on that list.
Oh,
Is going to
nice.
be Heathers because it does feel like that fine line of like, you know, these are real situations that could happen. It feels very real, but there's a weird comedic element to it that it is a very strange movie. Like it really is. It's definitely a dark comedy, but there's a lot of dark elements to this movie with like suicide and, you know, wanting to blow up the school. And, you know, it's crazy. And like you said, Slater is fantastic in this, but this is a movie that works, I think, on all levels, but it's not like anything you really have seen before. Like even
Very
watching it the
unique.
other day, I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't even tell you another movie that feels like this to me. Um, like I think of, do you ever see Jawbreakers? I kind of feel like that could kind of tote the line a little bit to this one.
That's another one that like I think I saw. I know about it at least. That's got
Yeah, it's kind of similar. It's got like what's her name there?
from
Oh my god,
Scream.
yes. It's got a lot of
Yeah, Rose
those
McGowan.
90s girls. Rose McGowan, yes. And then Marilyn Manson is in it, has a weird part in there. So
Oh
it's kind of
shoot.
similar, I think, if I had to choose anything, but this still kind of teeters that line of like what's reality, what's not, comedic, horror. Like there's so many that kind of go into this. So I think Heathers is a great pick because it is, you know, it can fall in this. And it's weird because is it a classic? Is it not a classic? If people
It's
know
a
it, they
cult
love it.
classic at least.
It had, yeah, I mean, it had a freaking musical. So, I mean, it's very well known. And
Yeah.
when I talked earlier about my mother telling me about 5 movies I needed to watch, Heathers was one of them as a kid.
Oh, nice.
It's so strange that like literally 5 movies or whatever she probably told me to watch, and we talked about like 3 of them tonight. So super wild. But yeah, great pick, man. Um, again, this is just a genre of movie that I think, for me at least, is huge. It's always been huge. I don't talk about it enough on the channel. I don't know if the people watching want to even hear me talk about this stuff, but I mean, it's about movies, man. And I know we all love this stuff. And I knew having you come on and taking you a little bit out of your element too would be fun to kind of go back and forth because I was curious to see, you know, which one of these you were fans of. And we have very similar tastes, man, because all of these that we talked about, I do really enjoy. And there's a couple on here that I want to rewatch, and there's a couple on here that you want to rewatch as well. So I'm glad we did this, and you know, we can save, you know, these for November for you because I know you have a lot going on in the Cobwebs channel. So why don't you tell people what you got coming up?
Yeah, one video I do want to promote because it's the horror side of this video, as I recently did my top 20 high school horror movies, so
See,
people
you
can go
always got
check that out.
I just said I was
So
gonna do a high school horror type movie. He's pumping out so much cool shit all the time. This guy.
well, don't
So
let me stop you. Do your own
no,
list. I want to see
no,
it.
I mean I see what I like to do is I like to do. I'm a big fan of doing like overlooked in certain areas because I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people will talk about the best, like we're doing now. So when I look at my collection and stuff, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to talk about the ones maybe people didn't know about, that maybe don't get recognized. So I'm going to do mine's more of like an overlooked
Oh, cool.
version of that. But yeah, definitely. But yeah, go check that out over on his channel. High School Horror, as you said, top what, 20?
20. Yeah.
Wow. Is it 20 best?
20 best, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right. No, I love it. Definitely check that out. And man, spooky season is coming. I'm sure you are ramping up over there. I am going to have you back on this channel within the next couple of weeks, right before October, because we've been talking about this for months. And I said to him, because he's like my uncle, they're trying to really get me into the Hammer horror stuff, which I'm not. It's not that I'm not a fan. I haven't spent enough time digging into it. The stuff I've seen, I really liked. Like I think Christopher Lee is like my favorite Dracula out there.
Oh, hell
But
yeah.
a lot of the other stuff, you know, I've seen like Curse of the Werewolf and stuff, but I haven't dug it deep. And what I do appreciate about the Hammer side of horror is the coziness to the movies. It's very chill. Like I could like dim the lights on like a Sunday, rainy Sunday afternoon and sit down there and watch like 3 of these movies and feel at ease, you know. And
Heck
I
yeah.
really do like that about it. And I've been promising my uncle and I've been promising you, hey, I want to get in more into this. So I'm going to have you back on in a couple weeks. We're going to go live and you're going to give me 10 of your favorite Hammer horror movies that you think I need to revisit or visit for the first time. And then in October, I'm going to, after watching them all, I'm going to come up and I'm going to rank them and I'm going to talk about them. So in this channel in October, it's going to be the Hammer Halloween. That's what you guys are going to get over here in October. And I'm going to have Daniel kind of help me ramp up for that and to open my eyes to some stuff that maybe I just passed by for all these years.
That'll be great. Let's get hammered. Let's do it.
We'll have to keep to that concept when we go live here. What else you got coming up, man? Anything that you have in the works that people can go tune in for?
Yeah, I'm about to put out a video on just like 10 bonkers crazy horror movies that are streaming on Tubi for free. Then I'm also working on a video of some like underseen haunting movies. I'm planning like a top 20 zombie movies video soon, that's gonna be a pretty big one. So that'll be fun. So yeah,
So
all kinds of spooky
have you never
lists.
done a zombies one?
I did one on like top 10 vintage zombie movies
Okay.
that came out like the 70s and back. But so far that's it. So I really need to do like just an all-time zombie list.
Nice, man. Yeah, guys, definitely go check out Daniel. He's killing it over there on the Cobwebs channel. He's always got some good stuff pumping out. And again, I've got so much of this stuff, but when I watch his list videos, it does open my eyes to things that I haven't seen. And it also opens my eyes to things like, oh my God, I haven't watched that thing in 10 years. Now you see and you talk about it. I want to go back and revisit it. So that's what I love about what you're doing over there. So definitely go check him out. And like I said, he will be back in a couple weeks live. So you guys be ready for that. He's going to kind of hook me up with he's going to really start to buckle down and make this list of 10 movies that he thinks I need to watch of Hammer. So I'm excited for that, man. But dude, thank you again for coming back here. I always appreciate having you on. It's always a fun conversation. Hopefully people got a little bit out of what we talked about today. And this is Garrett at Born2beRad. And like always, stay